And we are live. This is the Black Powder Podcast. Once again, I wish to thank you for joining us, as well as you thanking me for seeing me and being able to look at my face and hear my voice and understand that you are truly blessed, that you are truly ordained by the Most High, that you get to hear my opinion. And I am also joined by my guest, Anthony Welti. Right now you're muted. I don't know. Okay, now you're unmuted. But before we get to Anthony, I want to introduce my co-host, one of my greatest friends of all time, coming to you from the great state of North Carolina, home of Mark Robinson. My brother, Eric Parker.
And
Eric, how are you doing this fine evening?
and I'm doing good. And now the home of Bill Belichick, which whenever he
Oh,
was the coach of the
that's
Patriots, I did
huge.
not like him. But
North
I think,
Kakalaki is about to be a powerhouse.
yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm still a Gator fan. You know what I mean? They had a rough season this year, but here in North Carolina, you got to respect UNC for basketball. Normally, now they're about to become a football team, so we'll see how it does. But
Yeah, they're also
hey,
a good baseball team. My son played against them last year.
yeah,
They can hit the
I'm
ball.
closest to Wake Forest, and they're pretty terrible at most things. But anyways,
Well, they actually
uh,
get a baseball too. But
so
yeah. And
I
today,
just wanted to say, like,
uh, uh, uh,
we're inviting Anthony Welti on. He's got a background in insurance, and I'm going to let him get into his background. But also, Anthony and I met whenever I was running for city council. He also was involved traveling across the country. He stopped in an affiliate meeting. That was the first time I ever met him, and chopped it up at the Duval County affiliate. And I've known him pretty much
Duval.
ever since. He's been a great friend, a fellow passenger in this journey towards liberty. So, Anthony, man, how you been?
Well, I've been following the news out of North Carolina as well, and it's nice to see something non-disaster related. I know you guys have had a tough go of it. I hope the people near you out there are doing well, and that helps getting there with or without government in the way.
Mostly without government helping, and then when they get in the way, the Appalachians are going to do what they want to, anyways. So,
that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
beautiful.
we
um,
when we traveled out there a while back, we really fell in love with that area. Actually, considered moving there from Seattle instead of Tennessee, and God's got His ways of putting us in places we're supposed to be. But we do love North Carolina. We're glad we're so close to it.
yeah,
Wait a minute. You're
and
from Seattle. You're from the West Coast, the liberal hive of debauchery. That's where you're from.
Yeah, I try not to really talk about that too much. About that here locally, keep it under wraps. I got my license plate changed as fast as I could, just to just to stay on good terms with people. And it's been touch or go out here, but we're having fun so far.
did
So
you have to
obviously,
remove your coexist bumper sticker?
No, no, I still have all of them stickers. Although I think it might be time for a change. I will say it's been. I might be removing some Liberty stickers just to change up the look for a little while.
Uh-oh.
so they're not pro liberty down in your part of Tennessee.
Well, I mean, they talk about being pro liberty to a certain extent, but what I find nationally, no matter where I've traveled all over, that when push comes to shove, most people are statist authoritarians. And I don't mean that in a derogatory term because we don't need to throw shade at people. Well, time and place, of course. But
Yeah.
the reality is people like their services and they're used to a certain way of things being done. So they're statist and authoritarians in the sense that they don't even really know any different, right? They don't even realize that they're statist. But no, the people otherwise of their respect for government out here have been really great. They've been welcoming to us. We found a good church home, and we definitely did not bring liberal Northwest Seattle into the buckle of the Bible Belt here in rural West Tennessee.
Gotcha.
Uh, Eric.
So, Anthony, whenever I met you, you had just finished up running for, maybe not just, but you had ran for state insurance commissioner in the state of Washington. You broke a lot of records, votes, and fundraising. and you decided to travel across the United States. Would you like to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, I learned a lot through that experience running for office, and the only goal really was to just help people, right? I know as a libertarian, no matter how good of a campaign you run, anytime you're running in a partisan election, it's going to be an uphill battle to actually get elected. And we did a good job. We went around, we educated a lot of people about health insurance and healthcare in general, and really even just the position of insurance commissioner. Most people don't realize in most states, not all states, but in most states, your insurance, whether it's your home or your car or your life insurance or your health insurance, is all regulated by one governing department. And in most states, it's an elected position. So in most states, you've got one person in a bureaucracy of 100 or 200 people underneath them, really wrecking anything that could possibly be good in the insurance market and making what's bad worse. And so we went around, we gave a lot of solutions to people for how to reduce cost and increase choice and flexibility. And we ended up getting 324,000 people to vote for me in a partisan statewide election with three candidates on the ballot, which at the time was definitely a big number for a libertarian candidate.
Shoot.
Um, and then after that, we traveled with Spike for a little while. I became good friends with Spike and helped him on his campaign. We traveled nationally with him for a couple of his tours during his presidential, or excuse me, vice presidential candidate candidacy, where he was a bronze medalist. He's very proud of that bronze medal. And but Spike and I got to hang out. Miss Tasha, his lovely wife, and Adam Petty and some of the others on the bus. We really got to bond and really see what it takes to run big legitimate efforts for for libertarians and for honestly for third party candidates in general. So that was great, and we've done a whole bunch since then. We didn't stop working. We're out here in West Tennessee now, kind of focusing on building our own personal liberty, which is homesteading and homeschooling. But keeping an eye on national politics. Working slowly but surely locally to kind of get a little more ingrained, so that we can try to just have a positive impact on the people closest to us here in McKinsey, Tennessee.
So
So
Spike
go
Cohen,
ahead.
he's been on this show more than a few times, and we go back a while. Um, he's had a journey as of late that has been quite interesting. And before, I don't want to delve in that too much because I think the 800-pound gorilla in the room is what happened to the United Care CEO, and we got Luigi and him, and he's being both vilified and sanctified, so to speak, right now. Why do you think the insurance industry in America has gotten to the point where people cheer when one of the worst things that could happen to an individual being shot in the back? Why do you think that's being praised? Because I don't know a better term than saying it's being praised.
I think it's to get hits on social media or hits in mainstream media. All right, you typically have to be edgy, right? If it's something
Oh,
boring, it doesn't matter what the topic is, right? If you want clicks, hits, it's got to be eye catching, eye grabbing to some degree or another. And in media days these days, with social media and whatnot, I think it frankly it pays to be edgy in some cases, right? And also, I think people are angry. Um, Righteously angry in most cases, ignorantly angry in other cases.
right.
But when you have that raw human emotion, it sometimes just comes out in a negative way. I know I've been there. I don't think I've ever cheered anybody's death. However, maybe haven't stood up against somebody's death. Sometimes I let let the higher powers sort that stuff out. But frankly, as if I'm being honest, and Eric and I have talked a little bit about this, but I've been taking a little bit of a more reserved role in politics in the last 2 years, simply because I wanted to check my heart on how I thought about others that I disagreed with, how I treated others that I disagreed with. And I certainly never did anything that would ever put shame to my name or to God's name or to my family's name. but there's definitely situations I could have done things differently and better. That simply, um, how should I say this? Sometimes you just say stupid stuff, right? And it is what it is. But I feel like with this particular issue, there is a lot of people just being edgy. You're hearing more about some of that than what is probably anywhere near the majority of people. And then you have some righteous indignation over how insurance companies treat people. And I think a lot of people look towards the wrong solution. They want government to regulate things. What they don't realize is insurance, anything in the financial industry, is already the most heavily regulated industry in the world. So right, so you're trying to shove more water down a
A backed up
you
pipe.
know yeah, right. Like the more regulation isn't the answer, right? But
Right.
that's neither here nor there. That's a whole second part of this conversation. But I think people are just pissed off, and it's easy to be pissed off at somebody you don't know that's a nameless face. And then I think there's people that are just trying to have edgy memes, and frankly, some of them are funny. But I know that the family's probably grieving right now, for fair reasons, and their friends are probably grieving. And no matter what we want to see happen, I think, and maybe even as hard as it is, we have to be praying for peaceful revolution, right? Not violent revolution, because if a violent revolution comes about, a lot of our friends and families on both sides of us are going to die, right? And by cheering on the murder of somebody in cold blood, whether they deserved it or not, is a whole separate part of the conversation. But just doing that, that's a violent revolution, and it ends in bad things, right? There's not a purity to it. There's not a um, any type of clean to that, right? That is ever going to end up having a clean outcome.
Well, let me ask you this: if it's already dirty, how can to your point, the clean outcome? Because I like to play devil's advocate on this show because we're all libertarians. We all believe in liberty. We all believe in the core tenets of liberty. But in our society, we're battling. We're just think about libertarians. We're ants, but we're not
Mhm.
all ants in the same colony. The reason why ant colony is so strong is because they all come together. But libertarians are ants. This is something else talking. But we're individual ants, and individual ant cannot take down a ladybug. A ladybug is a predator. A lot of people don't know that, but ladybugs are excellent predators. But one ant is not going to be able to take down a ladybug. And if we're not going to, as libertarians, actually try to form a colony, and that sounds socialist and anti-individual liberty, but we do need that certain mindset as a collective. And, everybody thinks in the individual terms, but in the terms of liberty, there needs to be a collective mindset amongst the populace to move that forward. And if we're fighting a dirty enemy, and I'm not saying the insurance industry is the enemy, I'm just saying in general, how can we be clean on the other side coming out of that?
Yeah. I mean, having the moral high ground is it only takes you so far, right? Like
Yeah.
I completely understand that, and I think so. Here's an example for you. So I'm a Second Amendment supporter, right? I believe in using a firearm or any weapon of any kind to defend my life if it's necessary. I'm not a pacifist, but I believe in being a warrior in a garden instead of a gardener in a war, right? But
Right.
I also train jujitsu at a pretty high level, comparatively to the general public. That is, and I do that for a number of reasons. I love it, blah blah blah, right? But it's also because if in a self defense situation, I have the opportunity to create the change or safety that I need for my life without actually having to kill somebody, that's the preferred option. Now, when push comes to shove, if it's you or me, right, that's a choice that you have to make, right? But if I don't have to kill somebody, right, that's preferred than pulling a trigger. Now, I bring that up as an analogy because the truth is, if we want freedom from these tyrannical CEOs, right, and many of them very much are. We have to be able to make the extra effort to do things differently before we go straight to putting a gun to somebody's head and pulling the trigger. So what I mean by that is, if all we've done over the last years, is bitch and complain about how things suck, and then elect the same 98% of the politicians that are in office that have control over this, and then we continue to buy and use the products, right? We haven't really done what we can do to distance ourselves from a bad relationship, right? If a female wants to leave an abusive relationship, she should be supported. We should be able to get her away from that person that's abusing her. But if she keeps going back to that person, right, at a certain point, that doesn't make the person that's harming her right. But there's only so much that you can do, right? Again, I'm just using that as an analogy. Um, the reality is we have to, as individuals or as a collective, we have to say no and step away. And if you do that systematically, then less of us are going to be harmed by these outside sources that we don't want to harm us. And that means training jujitsu instead of pulling a gun. That means not going back to abusive spouses on male or female. It means not doing business with the government and with these insurance companies, and being willing to sacrifice in non-violent ways so that you have an opportunity to win the war without actually having to pull a trigger. And that's not always going to be possible, right? I support the idea of, states succeeding. The Civil War was, mayor, it was probably necessary. Let's be honest, we'd still be under king rule, right? We still are. um, right? I support the idea that sometimes we have to do violent things, right? But we have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror at the end of the day and say, I did everything possible before I did that violent thing. And I think if the society really looked at this, and I know in Washington, when I traveled the state and I talked to people how we could fix insurance, it was simply they didn't have the ideas, right? And they just needed people to share the ideas with. And they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. We should do that. Um, right. And so there's an education process, just like anything, knowledge is power, right? And if we have an ignorant society, we have people that don't understand how things work to no fault of their own. We all live busy lives, and who gives a shit enough to go research the state insurance commissioner's office, right? Like that's like walking into the DOL. Nobody wants to do that if they don't have to, right? But to not ramble here, the idea is we have to be able to do those things that aren't fun, that take extra time, means that we have to skip a beer somewhere. We have to not go to a birthday party because we're doing research on a topic. We're trying to get change made, right? And those things we shouldn't have to do that. But freedom, sadly, isn't free because people take it from you all the time, right? And I think if we do things the right way, there will be a lot less opportunity for people being murdered in cold blood in the streets.
So, Anthony, what are some things that we could do both, I guess, politically or as individuals to help improve our situation regarding the insurance industry, the products we purchase from insurance companies, the services we receive, and our way of living our life?
Well, there's a gazillion regulations, but let's talk about real quick what you could do in spite of government, right? So a lot of my mantra is like, okay, if I'm pragmatic in my belief, and I'm an anarchist, but let's say I'm pragmatic in my belief, and it's like, all right, well, this is going to exist to some degree, to some extent, regardless of what I want, right? So how do I live free in spite of the bad, right? So when it comes to healthcare, that means doing everything you can to step outside the system, right? The healthcare executives can't control you as well as they do if you don't have their product. So as a small business owner, right, and this is different for people that work in corporate America. Just I understand there's some differences, right? As a small business owner, I don't have a mandate through my employer that I have to have insurance through whatever company it is HR offers me, right? I get to shop for insurance on the open market. I refuse to shop in that market. I do not buy health insurance. My wife and I haven't had health insurance for about 10 years now. We put money aside when we need to cover healthcare emergencies, and we pay cash for our visits. And I have saved over the last 10 years, and we've had some injuries. We have one coming up that we'll probably have to shell out probably 10 to 15 grand for. But even including in future spending for that in the next year, we've easily, even if I cut into half my savings, we've still saved tens of thousands of dollars at this point by not buying insurance. And because of that, I also get to pick and choose which doctors I go to and where I do business with and the medications I do or don't take. So I encourage people to, when possible, step completely outside of the normal healthcare market. And for many people, that means just paying cash. Okay. There's also alternative products that are routinely being banned in some states. So again, this gets harder in some states. It got harder in Washington, but you can buy co-op style health insurance, for example, and that is more member to member cost sharing without a big for-profit insurance company in the middle. There's no copays typically. It's easier to get coverages. They pay cash for bills, and one of the reasons why they can pay cash for bills is because when you pay cash, the bills are lower, right? So we actually, even if we're paying out medical claims, we're still paying out less than what we would be by buying insurance or having the insurance companies pay for things. So buying a health co-op type plan, and there's a number of them on the market. One that's very libertarian oriented is, I think it's crowd health, I believe. Forgive me if I'm butchering their name. It's crowd something, but they have a Bitcoin variation where you can buy and pay for your co-op plan with Bitcoin, and then they have a more traditional model, and it's a couple $100 a month, right? And if you go to the doctor, they pay your bill for you. You can also use what's called direct primary care, where and I had this for about a year here in Tennessee. We ended up switching away from the gal just because it was an inconvenient location. But we pay $100 a month. It's like a gym membership. Anytime we had a question, a cold, a test that needed to be done, right? Anything that can be done in house at a doctor's office, we could just go for free. We paid our $100 a month, no bill. After we come and we go, we get no bill in the mail, right? And then if she needed to refer us out, right, we'd have to be a cash patient wherever we got referred to. Um, but over the course of a year, we paid $1,200 for our family of three to see a doctor multiple times whenever we need it. Got our checkups, got our blood drawn, all those things, and we use that in conjunction with our other open market choices, right? So for step one, you have to, if at all possible, remove yourself from their system. It's essentially a boycott, and people need to be willing to step up and do that. If you don't like Jeff Bezos, don't buy from Amazon. If you don't like Bill Gates, don't use Microsoft or Apple, right? Like, we have choices to make, and they're not always fun choices. We have to do things that we don't like sometimes, and if that means giving up a little bit of convenience or finding a different product somewhere, like, we need to be able to do that. And that's where I go back to what I said a few minutes ago. Most people haven't even been able to do that yet, and then now we're popping off shooting guns at each other. It's like, that's just silly.
Right. So we got a question here from that Liberty lady for you, Anthony. Says, is it possible to get more insurance co-ops like MediShare that maybe only focus on preventable and catastrophic?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. So, for example, like, I have an accident insurance policy. I think a lot of us have heard of AFLAC, right? I don't have an AFLAC policy. I have a different one. It's very similar to Aflac, but it's like I got hurt doing jujitsu a couple months back. I had about $1,000 in bills through a X-ray, and an exorbitant amount of money to see the doctor there. But it came out to be about $1,000 bucks. Had that been billed through insurance, it probably would have been triple that, plus the $700 or $800 a month I'm paying for health insurance, right? So even though $1,000 is too high for the amount of help I got, I believe the cost of healthcare needs to come down as well, and there's lots of ways to do that. But even just having a accident insurance policy can help bridge the gap on some of these um, injuries that can pop up. And you're like, oh crap, I got a couple $1,000s here. $1,000, what do I pay? Right? Many people are living paycheck to paycheck, don't have a couple grand saved up. 30, $40 a month to cover a family with an accident insurance policy. You use it. If you do the math, use that once every 5, 10 years. You're at least breaking even. right? If you got a family, I got a kid, right? Knock on wood, I don't have to use it, but let's be honest, kids get hurt, right? I'm
Yeah.
getting older, I could get hurt, right? So like, it's a good money investment, right? You just do cost rewards analysis on that. I also have cancer insurance. So I pay, I think it's like $100 a month or something for cancer insurance. Is it going to cover all my cancer bills? Absolutely not. Right. But it's going to take the sting out of some hospital visits and staying at hotels and chemotherapy. And it's going to take a lot of the sting out of paying cash if I ever get cancer. But the cool thing is after 20 years, if I don't get cancer, I can do one of two things. I can take all of my 20 years of premiums back in cash, or I can have them reapply that premiums to pay me forward for another 20 years. So I don't actually have to pay for insurance I'm almost 2/3 of the way through it now. I won't be paying for cancer insurance in my 50s and my 60s, which is when I'm most likely to get it. Right. So that $100 a month over 20 years, actually it's $50 a month over 40 years. And that's nothing, right? To help me should something bad happen. Or I take the 20 or 30 grand out or whatever that mass out to. I don't even know. I probably just made that number up. I take out that cash back and, go on a vacation after 20 years. All right, cool. I beat cancer for 50, till I got 50. I might as well, let's go to Fiji with it, right? Like I'll risk cancer at the next point of my life. Right. So yeah, there's lots of different things that you can buy into, and it's about being educated. And the reality is so many people are ingrained in just, for young people, just getting the insurance that their parents had, or just going to where the government says, like the marketplace website through the .gov, right? Or you get it through your employer. You don't really have a say, and that's just historically been the case for what, 50 to 70 years now, since the mid 60s. Um, right, so it's changed over a couple generations now, where people don't even know that there are other options out there because they never knew they existed. You get back prior to the 60s, a lot of what I just described is how things were done naturally, and they didn't have to call it direct primary care. You just called it your doctor. They didn't have to call it a health co-op plan. You actually, in many cases, you called it insurance, right? But
Yeah.
now it's so far out of what people know about, um, that I really do truly think that that's one of the most important things. That's why I ran my campaign for insurance commissioner, was so I could talk about all these solutions, so that when I didn't win, people still knew more than they did before. And I still get messages. What's that? It's 4 years later now. I still get messages from people thanking me for the solutions that I helped them with, or still reaching out to me with more questions and stuff. And yeah, I wish I would have won, so we could have made a bigger impact. But the good news is I didn't get stuck in Washington for 4 years.
Well,
Yeah, that
the government has a captive citizenry. We don't have the knowledge to think outside of what they what they tell us is available. With healthcare, it's 15 to 18% of the GDP. I think that's ridiculous, because what that's saying is we make money off of whether you live or die. Preferably, we don't have to support you living, if it comes down to our bottom line. And the question I wanted to ask you, I believe we're all capitalists here. We believe in capitalism. I wish this country believed in capitalism, because right now the government picks the winners and the losers. And when it comes to capitalism, like a company like United Healthcare, they make decisions on their bottom line. And where I live, the cancer, I forgot the name of that cancer triangle down in southern Louisiana where all the oil industry is, but it's cancer is the number one killer, collectively in the United States, you know, and it's very expensive to treat. And when you're like a United Healthcare and you're looking at a patient whose prospects of living aren't that high, what is their incentive for them to spend this money versus, they have to be held accountable to their publicly traded company, to their shareholders? How does that? How does capitalism and treating people coexist together?
I think that's a really smart question and a thoughtful one, really. I don't like to speak just off my, speak out my butt, so to speak here. So let me think. I think that I think that it starts with us as an individual. Okay. At the individual level, we have to have opinion, like a real, like a moral code that we live on, right? And part of that moral code needs to be associating with other people that share similar values. Okay. And as soon as you come into somebody that doesn't have those same moral codes, it doesn't mean that you have to write them off as dead, right? But it means that you might not have to buy from them, right? Or you might not go hang out with them all the time, right? Um, and when you start applying that at the individual level, and then you start applying it at the greater level, it becomes easy to pick and choose who you do business with. Some people look at the lifestyle I live, one of which where I like, so I, for example, I've traveled in a travel trailer for years now. I still live in my trailer. One of the reasons I do that is because I didn't want to do business with big banks and mortgage companies. Okay. And yeah, do I love always living in a travel trailer? No. Has it afforded me some incredible life opportunities and adventure and joy? 100%, right? But that's neither here nor there. The reality is I had a choice years ago. My wife and I looked at houses. We could have signed on the dotted line, and we could have tied ourselves to the banking industry. And we made the choice to not do that. And that means now we live more minimalistically. We're building our property from scratch by hand. Um, right? And not doing business with somebody that we don't want to do business with, right? But if people aren't willing to do that, that's when it breeds the 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 rich and the powerful folks that take advantage of people, right? And it's truly our own fault, society, right? We let
So,
this happen in many ways. We can't play victim here, right? I choose not to be a victim, and I train martial arts. I learn how to shoot a weapon, right? I teach my son, my wife. We will never be hurt, is my hope, right? But we have less of a chance of being hurt because we've taken control over that aspect of our life. We've also taken control over the companies that we do business with, right? If I shop at Walmart, it's because I'm using them to meet my goals and objectives, right? And if they don't help me meet my goals or objectives, I am not going through them. I'm going to somebody else, right? And as part of my goals and objectives is to spread the money to other companies, right? So I pay more to go do certain things other places, even though I could go to Walmart, right, or whatnot. It's all a choice. Now,
so
so much of this is a choice where we have to make the choice to do business with companies that have good values, and there isn't a shortage of good people in this world. That's it'd be asinine for us to think, well, there's no good companies out there. Well, the good companies oftentimes get bought up and then consolidated, right? We all know how that works, right? But that doesn't mean that we have to willfully give our money to the not good companies. Um, so I think it comes down to personal responsibility in that respect so often.
so Anthony, and when did I don't know, you might not remember exactly, the Affordable Care Act, whenever it first came about, uh, it had the health care mandate, if you will, and they essentially fined you or taxed you, fined you, if you didn't have health insurance. I
Mhm.
believe since then that mandate's been removed on a federal level, but can you speak to, if you know, if the law is different in certain states, that if you have to get it through your employer? Is that a state mandate, a state law, that, or is it that your employer has to offer it? Are you able to opt out? All right. Can you speak specifically for Tennessee or Washington when you live there?
Yeah. So, well, here's an example. So you're just talking about compulsory insurance laws, right? We have
Yeah.
compulsory insurance laws in so many other aspects. It's only natural that it's going to eventually happen with healthcare. This idea of no single payer, right? But in every other aspect, people like forced insurance, but then many people are against single payer. I'm like, well, why do you support compulsory insurance laws in any respect. But to my knowledge, I don't know very many states, if any, that mandate it. I I can't say that the law in Washington passed or didn't. I know they were talking about doing something in that respect after I left. I stopped paying attention, and frankly, I didn't look at each individual state's rules. I was really focused on either what the federal regulations were or what my individual state was. But one example of a compulsory education law, though, in like Washington, and this happened right after I left, they mandated long-term care coverage, right? So if you don't buy a long-term care product through an open market, then you get forced into a state-run long-term care, right? So no matter what, you have long-term care coverage, and it's terrible. If you get it through the government side, it's really it's just ridiculous what they're even forcing people to have. It's terrible coverage, and then the other people are buying it out on the open market, and these are people that never wanted long-term care coverage, and now they're spending $50 to $200 a month on an insurance product that they don't want or need at this age of their life. So I do know, just a one note, like the ACA was it absolutely cost people money. My family, we didn't have insurance for a while. We paid fines, a couple $1,000s over the 4 years I think that it was enacted. And I'm no fan of then or now of President Trump, but I was publicly on record of, and it's probably the one time I ever really complimented him was when he repealed that law years ago and saved my family thousands of dollars, and I'm grateful for that. You know, um, I think Canada has single payer, other countries have single payer. We have single payer in the form of Medicaid, Medicare already for senior citizens. Um, I think it's inevitable that we're going to get it all across the country. And I don't think the Republicans are going to stand in the way of it. The Republicans don't have, first off, they support most to all of the federal programs in existence already. It's going to be funny when Veek and Elon try to slash the budget with the Dodge bureaucracy that they created, but then Congress doesn't slash the budget at all, because everybody that's elected wants all these pet projects because they're jobs, they're government jobs that their friends they got, their union jobs, their donors, that want certain
Lobbyist.
things, right? Like the single payer, the only thing stopping it right now is the insurance lobby. So as much as some people on the would uh, really decry lobbying in a certain respect, that some of the lobbying is probably good right now, is it's slowing us from getting to that single payer, which, as bad as things are now, and they are terrible, it will be worse if it's a government run program. There will be more death panels than there already are. And you're just going to be able to, it's going to be terrible. But this is inevitable going to happen. The Republicans do not have a plan for fixing healthcare. Go find any Republican official in any city, in any state, in any county in America. You will not find them to have any individual answer for how they could make insurance cheaper or healthcare cheaper.
It's a no-win situation for every politician that tries to touch this.
No, and
Because
what's happening now is the Republicans are starting to get on board with price fixing on things like insulin, because insulin's such a hot button topic right now, and we all know people need medicine and costs are too high. But there are Republicans in my state, there's Republicans all across the country. President Trump helped pass a price fix on insulin at the federal level through Medicaid, right? And what that's going to do is it's going to drive supply down. It's going to decrease the number of decrease the amount of innovation. And sure, I don't want these companies to get to be taking advantage of sick, dying people that in many cases they helped make sick in the first place with our food systems and the medications that people have been force fed for decades now that are truly terrible. Um, but the reality is like there's so many individual problems with healthcare and health insurance that you can't. There isn't one switch that you can do to fix it, and it's libertarians say, "Oh, just deregulated everything," and well, like yes, obviously, but what, right? And there's a handful of things that we could do. The number one thing we could do to reduce the cost of insurance right now in this country, not healthcare, just insurance. Let us buy from over national lines. It's that simple. If I want to buy insurance from a Chinese company, China's healthier than us, right? They can charge us more than they charge their people to help basically supplement or subsidize their healthcare in China with our insurance premiums, but still charge us drastically less than what we're paying. And ultimately, all I care about is if I get a giant bill, I'm not screwed to pay it, right? I don't care what, to a certain extent, which organization it is, if it's saving me money, right? Now, of course, we should pick and choose who we do business with. And if you have values against doing business with certain companies, like, oh, well, more power to you, right? Whatever. Um, you want to buy American. But when it comes to like my cancer bill being paid, I don't care personally who's paying it, right? I just want it paid so my family don't go bankrupt.
Yeah.
So allowing us to buy from international companies, whether it's in China or England or South Africa or Ireland or Sweden, I don't care, Canada, right? Allow these companies to sell us a product, and all of a sudden we'll be able to see price competition in a way that this country hasn't ever seen it.
Yeah. It's
So I'm
interesting you said China real quick, Eric, because I wrote down China before he said it. Because I've mentioned this before on the podcast. America is on a shit ton of drugs. I know I take cholesterol and BP medication. Um, but all the precursors to those drugs that Americans are on are made in either China or India. When you talk about a national security threat, you're talking about a a country who our politicians keep saying over and over again is a potential adversary in China. We need to prepare our military against China. We need more ships. We need more capabilities to thwart the threat that China is presenting. Meanwhile, all the drugs that these people are on that are telling you that, because all of politicians are out of shape and whatnot, they're taking drugs to prolong their life. Their medications, the precursors, are made in China. And for Americans to not understand the threat, if you want to continuously bang the drum of war with China and not look at the threat it is to our economy, because we don't have the manufacturing capability to keep your local Walmart stocked. We don't have the factory capacity to make sure your Meemaw and Peepaw get their arthritis medication and everything else. And meanwhile, we're talking about, like I said, war and rumors of war over our social media and everything. And as Americans, we're not preparing for that. We're not ready for that at all as a society, and it's the government's fault. Now, Eric, you were about to say something before I uh, promptly interrupted you.
Yeah, great rant though. That was worth interrupting me. So back to China, and to kind of go back to lobbyists, it seems to me like it's a little bit of a catch-22. Anthony, on one hand, you say if anything, lobbyists might be the biggest barrier keeping us from going into a single-payer healthcare system, or at least the most powerful, they have the most money to help prevent it, to lobby to keep that from happening, while at the same time they're the ones lobbying to make sure that we can't buy our insurance from overseas at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Most of the time, companies want to limit competition, right, or be first to the market, or at least slow things up. Like, I don't think that's inherent to insurance companies,
No,
right?
No.
It's every single major company in this country, really, and even Elon Musk, right, and through his companies, right, have used government regulation to their benefit. I in many cases, I don't necessarily believe that those are always with sinister intentions. It's the system that's in play here, and if I can find a way to better my family, right, it is probably reasonable that we're considering how to do that, right? If I can better my company right, but so that comes down to a moral code again, though, right? Like, I would never, personally speaking, would never use government to make to change a rule to make my life better in a way that hurts others, right? So, for example, like here in Tennessee, right, there's an ordinance in my town that got sprung up on me after we moved here that says I can't live in a travel trailer, right? And on my own property here. And if I fight to change that rule, and it gets changed, and it will someday, it doesn't hurt or harm anybody else by changing that rule, right? Now, if I change it in such a way that says that other people have to live in a trailer, right? Now all of a sudden it's Anthony getting, his way, but now you not getting yours, right? So when we're dealing with these lobbyists, right? Again, it comes down to who do we do business with, who do we elect, who do we support, and are they using liberty to pick and choose, or excuse me, are they abusing liberty and
Yes.
using regulation to pick and choose winners and losers, right? And the reality is, some of these companies um, have enough money and have developed enough money over the years to buy off politicians, and we, the people, keep electing them and their friends over and over and over and over, which to me means we get what's coming to us, right?
Insane.
Right. So I don't know. There are things we
You
can
do know.
do.
I just want to interject real quick. You do know, so go ahead, brother.
Well, and so China, right? Let's talk about China. So first off, Frederick Bastiat
China.
said it best, right? If goods and people, uh, I'm probably butchering his quote. If goods don't go over national borders, bullets will. Right, is basically what Frederick Bastiat said. Somebody can drop that in the chat and tell us what the exact quote was. It was funny. I was actually reading it yesterday, and I just can't call it right now. But the idea is war inevitably through history often comes with because of lack of resources being traded and people working collectively together. Once you stop working collectively together, um, the opposite happens, right? You start working collectively against each other. So what that means then is it's not so like even if we have negative ideas like what's coming in from China, right? Shutting China off only makes things worse, right? We need to be wise about what we are using from China, and every company here in America and every company everywhere in the world. We should be wise about what we're purchasing, where it's done. The chocolate industry, for example, right? We just went through a chocolate holiday with Halloween. We're up on chocolate holiday here with Christmas, and then we got another one coming up with Valentine's Day. Chocolate is made with slave labor,
Yeah,
child slave labor in other countries, right? Hershey's
West African.
participated
Yeah,
in that,
West African countries.
right? It still does,
Yeah,
right? And one of my dear friends out here was the first person, another libertarian, that helped turn me on to that issue. I'd never even heard of it before,
yeah,
right? But now I buy less from those companies. Am I perfect? No, right? I buy from companies sometimes that I don't want, and ultimately it's because it's usually helping me meet my means to an end, right? And sometimes I make those choices. I haven't sacrificed everything that maybe I could. I'm not a martyr, right? Like I still eat the occasional Hershey bar if I'm being honest, right? But so when it comes to so I use that example because there's bad companies here in America. There's bad companies in China. It's not any one country, I think, that's the boogeyman per se. There's always bad actors because humans are bad inherently, um, and we have to fight to be good. But if we shut down, like, and what we're doing already is we are limiting via regulation the number of medications that can be made here in America, right? It's cheaper to make and buy things from other countries. That's why it's done that way, right? Most everything that we buy from other countries, we could make or produce here in America, right? Some things are easier in other countries because of climate or resources, but for the most part, most things we could make here in America, right? But it's X times more expensive to do that, right? So that's why if we want to get things for cheap, we end up importing things. But but saying it's China's fault for us importing medications is blaming not is you're looking at a symptom, not the root cause, which is the original regulation here at home,
yeah.
right? If we deregulate it here at home and we make wise personal choices about who we do business with, whether it's domestic or international, then we can collectively push society the direction that we want it to go. But sadly, most people are lazy and busy and tired and stressed out for any number of legitimate reasons. And we don't have time to make those sacrifices. We don't have the energy to give up those things that we have. And ultimately, we get stuck with bad health care because of it when we really could be forcing this change by and like my example, I'm living proof of this. My own healthcare world is drastically better than probably 99% of the people listening to this right now. Is
Right.
it perfect? Hell no. Not even close to what it could or should be, but I'm better off than you guys, right? I don't say that to brag. I say that because I found ways to make myself better. And that's why I share this stuff. And that's why I take time away from my son to come on podcasts like this to hopefully be like, hey, hit me up if I didn't touch on a specific question in a conversation like this, let me know. I will help you find a solution. I will literally go out of my way, take phone calls, take text messages, answer Facebook messages to help make your life better. I don't care about getting elected. I care about making people's lives better.
Right. And I'll to one of your points I want to make, because that was very profound. I wanted to say, you know, a lot of people say convenience is cheap. And I will stand in front of you and say, no, it's not. Because convenience, you know, buying the cheaper product, especially something you're going to consume, buying a cheaper brand of clothing, if you live in a particularly a colder climate and you buy a cheaper jacket, you're still going to be cold. The thing about Americans in our current economic state, where corporatism, because I firmly believe we don't live in a capitalist society. We live more like a oligarchy, like they have in Russia, where you know the corruption of the elite extends to our political figures. Because I'll always say, uh, every entity, corporation, and enterprise has a lobbyist in your state capital in Washington D.C. except the American people. We have nobody that will that we've elected that will listen to us. If you contribute $5,000 or more, you may get a actual email response instead of the pre-typed, pre-printed. Thank you for your concerns. We are looking at this very carefully, and we will take your opinion into account. If you're not giving these fools money, if you're not supporting them, they don't support you. And that's what Americans don't understand, because we, like you said earlier, we keep electing these same jackasses. Excuse my French, but jackasses in the Bible. We elect the same jackass asses to elected office over and over again and expect different results. And everybody's excited about this last. Oh, a lot of 49.9% of Americans are excited about the last election cycle. And I'm like, I've seen this movie before. It didn't work out the first time. And then the losing side, the 48.7 that lost, are like, we're doomed. And I'm like, what the hell were you looking at the last 4 years? You know, these people, and you know, this is where I consider myself an elitist, because I can sit back and say you're all dumb, you're all stupid. And I know that may not be the most eloquent statement, but I truly believe that you're dumb if you think these people are going to change a system that brought them into power. You're dumb if you think these corporations are going to lower prices when the inflationary factors technically don't exist anymore. Employment is extremely low. It's the employment rate right now is great for a great economy. You know, the infrastructure, the what's the word I'm looking? The infrastructure issues that we had when the Trump shut us down in 2020 don't exist anymore. The supply structure, everything is functioning at a hum right now, and prices. Why would a corporation that's publicly traded bring down prices if you're not going to change your your shopping ways? If you're still going to consume, they're still going to consume your wallet and leave the prices where they're at until you change. And Americans do not want to realize that. They want to wave the flag, sing the song, and thank God Almighty that we're free at last and we could do these things when you're not. And that's what I, as we start wrapping it up, that's my rant. But I'm gonna give it to Eric, and we're gonna let Anthony have the last word.
So I agree with you, Marcus. We definitely don't live in a free market capitalist laissez-faire Austrian economic society. We're more like crony capitalism
Yeah.
headed towards, is it fascism? Is that where the government runs corporations
It,
and business basically?
it's a
So
nationalist. Yeah, I guess you
yeah.
could say. Yeah.
There's some
So I
weird
mean,
overlap with some of them, right? And the truth is, it's all authoritarianism, right?
Yeah,
It
it's
yeah.
doesn't matter what
that,
shade of authoritarianism.
And well, that's what Anthony tonight we mostly focused on health insurance, but real quick, what are some other insurance areas where there's the same level of overlap with authoritarianism and government involvement, and where we could deregulate, and maybe it would be easier than healthcare, maybe not.
Well, I mean, home insurance is a huge one right now, and car insurance, right? Like we're seeing both home and car insurance rates all over the country go up, and in a lot of states, you're actually the what's crazy is that some of the insurance companies literally just can't keep up with how bad the market is. And they're losing money, so they're actually they're leaving markets entirely because like this market is terrible. Like it's with either the risk to natural disaster, the overregulation, the inflation. Like it just doesn't, it literally doesn't math out anymore. And they're like, we got to pull the plug. That's why Florida is seeing a huge reduction. That's why
and in
California's seen a
California,
huge
yeah,
reduction, right? And but that's been, it's not just because of natural disasters. That's been happening organically for decades, right? It takes, for example, if you are a car insurance company and you want to have a new type of car insurance policy, right? Let's say you had platinum coverage, gold plus 2x times a billion awesomeness package. And now you want to be like, well, we actually want to sell this instead. And it's, the next best thing times 3 billion, right? Car insurance. To get that next best car insurance policy approved takes years to get through the regulatory process. It takes years just to get a new product to market so that a consumer even has a choice of potentially saving money. um, so that's huge. Insurance is taxed all over the country. Your home insurance and your car insurance and your health insurance, it's all taxed. These are old numbers and it's in one state. But when I was running for office in the state of Washington, they were paying, I think, $400 million a year in taxes. The
Jeez.
insurance companies were, right. So it wasn't a tax that you saw on your insurance bill. It was part of the policy surcharge, though, right, that ends up going to the insurance companies because they're offsetting, they're paying these taxes. And we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars just in one state per year, right? Extrapolate that over across the country, and now you've got billions of dollars in just taxes being paid to purchase something that at one point in time was mandatory for health insurance but is mandatory still with car insurance. So they're taxing you to buy car insurance that you have to buy. Otherwise, you get a ticket and go to jail if you don't pay the ticket, or they'll just kill you if you decide to fight back. Right? Like let's not gloss over the fact that every law that government has, even something as simple as car insurance, ultimately comes with the threat of violence, aka death, if you revolt too much. Right? And then they tax you for it, right? And home insurance isn't mandatory, right? The only reason you have to buy home insurance is because you have a mortgage, right? And most people want home insurance, because they don't want their house to burn down and be up the creek without a paddle, right? But even then, if we got into different building methods, we could greatly reduce the risk of fire and damage from national disasters. We can reduce the cost of home insurance by changing building regulations, right? So all these things are so tied into each other. Health and the insurance side of things has its own issue of regulatory side of things, but then there's all the things that insurance pays for that has a gazillion issues, right? And that's why, like, there is no one solution. But regardless if it's home or auto or car or life or health insurance, we should have the right, and I believe we do have the right, the natural human right to buy a financial product from any organization in the world. Right. And if we do that and we allow us to buy other things from other countries like we do in other ways, I can buy my, we can buy, bananas from wherever. We can buy avocado from Mexico if we don't want to buy it from California, right? We can buy all these different things. We buy TV parts and steel and all these different things if we want to. Sure, there's tariffs that we have to worry about, but we have the option to buy them at least to a certain extent. But when it comes to financial products, everything is here in America. Ask yourself about that. You are forced to buy American when it comes to a financial product.
Yeah.
Good thought for everyone to have to ponder while they're trying to go to sleep. So I wanted to give you the opportunity, Anthony, to plug your company if you're interested in it. I thought of you first whenever insurance started trending. I was like, he'd be a great guest to have. But I wanted to extend the opportunity for you to plug Peace Insurance Group, if I got the name correctly, and tell us what states you operate in. And real quick.
Yeah, so I used to be a captive insurance agent doing home and auto for over a decade. That's why I ran for state insurance commissioner. But I worked for one captive company. I had to sell all their products, and sure, they were okay, they were good, and I always did the right thing for people. Oftentimes, not selling them a product that they shouldn't buy. Um, when I got out of my campaign for state insurance commissioner, I left the captive world. I started my own brokerage company selling life insurance. I do that in roughly 10 different states. Florida, North Carolina, excuse me, Florida, Connecticut, Washington, Oregon, uh, where else? Texas, Arizona, Michigan, a handful of other states. And I sell life insurance. I do that for a couple reasons. One, I get to be my own boss. I get to choose the companies that I sell insurance for, ones that I've vetted. There are ones that got bailouts in the past. I don't do business with those companies. Um, there's companies that are good companies. Perfect, no, but good. I choose to do business with those companies. And I'm not captive to a company that I don't want to be, right? So I own my own life insurance business, and we do that because I get to help families. I get to help make sure that if you pass away or one of your loved one passes away, that things like your mortgage still get paid, that your children have money for college, or that your spouse has money to buy a nanny to help out or to pay for full-time daycare or whatever the different financial things that could come up when somebody passes away. I get to help with that. And to me, there's a really human aspect to that that's a little bit removed from home or car insurance, right? And insuring products. Life insurance is the one thing that pays you. Every other type of insurance you buy ultimately pays somebody else. So I'm proud to sell life insurance to help families get paid when something bad happens, and that money goes directly to them and to future generations. You go to peaceinsurancegroup.com, or you can find me at Peace Insurance Group on Facebook.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if you cut off that because you'll have access to it. And if you wanted, I could send you a download of this podcast. But you should cut that out and share that on your website, on your pages, on social media and whatnot, so people can plug you, plug the Black Powder podcast, plug the true libertarian people that want nothing but the best for you, and that's to leave you the hell alone and allow you to make choices for yourself, for your family, for your God, and for your life. Most importantly, people that actually support you, not these people that are looking to make this money off of you for nefarious reasons, just to expand their lifestyle. Support people that because I always say, if you're not willing to defend the liberty of those you disagree with, you're not willing to defend your own liberty, and that's life in general. If I'm not free, you're not free, and that's what America is. And I would hope everybody who watched and listened to this tonight understands that we try to bring you America here. And I want to thank Anthony because you're one of the most profound guests that we've had on here. And I think we have quite excellent guests, but I like the fact that we were able to talk about some real serious shiest, on here, and it was something that can educate people on stuff. And I ask everybody who watched and listened, look up his company and see where you stand on your life insurance, especially you younger people, because it's always cheaper the younger you are to get good life insurance.
Well, and
So
I'll say this real quick too.
uh,
I don't sell any other type of insurance. I am absolutely an expert, however. So if you have any insurance questions, hit me up. I'm not going to sell you nothing. I'm not going to try. I literally can't. But if you need help saving money on your home or your car insurance, and you're listening to this, and you're a Black Powder podcast follower, consider this a freebie, right? I will help
or
you go over your policies. I will help you find ways to save money, buy more Christmas presents, and and donate to decent libertarian candidates with your change.
awesome. I thank you very much, Eric. Do you have anything else?
Anthony, it's great. Sorry we ran out of time. Didn't really get to talk about homesteading or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Maybe we'll have to have
Well,
you on later to talk about
yeah, well,
your homesteading adventure and what you've been facing. You kind of, dabbled a little, your toe in the sand a little bit of that.
I'm
What
I'm
you're
really
dealing with
down
in
with
your
the homesteading.
local government. So
I'm
Yeah,
really down with the homesteading episode because I think a lot of Americans could truly learn from that and going back, to more basic foundation because AI is going to remove a lot of people from the workplace.
I
And so,
use AI daily as a homesteader
yeah, and
and as a jujitsu athlete. I used it for a project for
it's
my
going to
academy
change
today.
the AI that you know right now is going to look like Atari 2600
I
for
was telling my wife this morning I was having trouble with Chat GDP today. It's still phenomenal. I was like, "God, I just can't wait for 5 years from now."
it's
Like
it's it's going to be simply even Elon Musk talked about it, and this is when we get to the homesteading episode, let's try to set this up for February because we have what was your damn I don't want to insult my homie Ben. Was it that we just had on Ben and
Ben Owen, was that
Ben
it?
Owen? Yeah. We're gonna have him on in January. I want to have you on February for the homesteading episode
If
because
you're interested and available.
yeah, it's gonna happen. You
that's
don't have a choice at this point. But
I
AI,
consent.
yeah, AI. Even Elon Musk said we have to start looking at universal basic income because AI is going to completely
Oof.
change the game. It's going to get
Well,
rid of
the
blue
problem
collar
is we're 30 years behind on our education system. We should
way
have been changing our education for the inevitability of robotics and stuff,
yeah,
right? And the problem is now is like we're too late. Now, I don't support UBI. I think sadly, we need natural causes of death to change the way people to live. I don't want to
right.
see murder in the street, but sadly, for people to change their ways, bad things have to happen sometimes, right? Like that's why people on the street don't get clean until they hit rock bottom, right?
Uh,
Like we're like UBI isn't the solution, but yeah, we've got to change things. That's why I homeschool. That's why my son is learning how to navigate this world much more effectively, I think, than a lot of his peers. But
that's
yeah,
a
we can chat next month or the month after. I'm always happy to hang out and share libertarian thoughts with people.
Sweet.
that sounds like a great setup for February, Eric.
Yep. Love you, brother. Good talking to you.
Yeah, peace
Are
out.
you talking to me or the white guy, dude? I had to get my black joke in here at some point. Oh wow, wow. All right, I'm gonna get one too, but I want to thank everybody who tuned in, watched, listened, whatever you did. This is the Black Powder Podcast, the only real libertarian podcast. And I want to say it's led by the only real libertarian, myself, Marcus Matthews. I want to thank our guest, Eric Welti, for coming on today to talk about insurance and all that great stuff. Thank my co host, Eric Parker. Even though I, as usual, made you look better than you are just by my physical appearance and made you sound smarter than you are just by my mere presence. I just, but thank you very much. And we are going to sign off. So watch our faces for the next 2 to 3 weird seconds as this